This week on Late Night with Monica Price, I'm joined by the legendary guitarist and lyricist Jim Cregan and BBC's Alex Dyke, and they join me to talk about their massively successful Stars, Cars, Guitars #1 podcast, which they now produce and present along with the former Spandau Ballet frontman Tony Hadley. It's now in a second sizzling series, and launching last year, the first series soon took them to the top of the main Apple podcast charts. We talk about how the show has changed during lockdown and how all three are loving the fun, unscripted approach to the show. Welcome to Late Night with Monica Price.
Hi, this is Jim Cregan. I'm with Monica being interviewed with Alex Dyke, and we're on the Late Night with Monica Price show.
Hey, Jim, that was really good. It's like those American charity telethons.
Great to have you on the show tonight. Welcome to Late Night with Monica Price.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Absolute pleasure, Monica. Now, Jim and I should be well trained at not talking over each other on Zoom. So let's not.
I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about?
I say, don't make it a car crash, Jim.
Too late.
It's the joys, isn't it? It's the joys of just doing all these lovely interviews, but by the age of technology. But it's great to see. Thank you so much. So, Jim, wonderful to have you here. I mean, rock guitarist extraordinaire, musical director, Sir Rod Stewart, of course, amongst other things. We played all over the world, seen it all, been it all. And Alex, it's just so great to have you as well. You know, renowned broadcaster, wonderful to have you on the show. So great to have you both. And we're going to talk about your podcast, of course, Stars, Cars, Guitars, which is great. Now, I've seen a few episodes, and I have to say, I find it really funny. I like it. And it's become so popular. You're actually doing a second series now at the moment, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, we are. The first series did really well. We got to #2 in Britain.
Yay!
In the Apple podcast charts. And at Christmas, even though the series ended, we were still #1 in Chile, which we were thrilled about. So we've hit various territories all around the world with the first season. The second season is a little bit different. First season was recorded socially distanced in people's back gardens. The second series we've done like this on Zoom, but that has enabled us to launch a YouTube channel as well. Fantastic. And Jim and myself and Tony have branched off doing separate interviews as well as our weekly get-together.
I saw that actually, and of course we haven't got Tony here today. Tony Hadley, frontman of Spandau Ballet, of course. He's not with us today, but it's great that you could be here, and it is. And I've noticed that because was that intentional, Jim? Did you want to do interviews by yourself? Did you just want to get rid of these other two and do something by yourself, or was it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've got rid of Tony. It's now just getting rid of Alex, and then I'll come over and I'll do the show with you. That sounds like
a fabulous idea. I have the controls. I have the power to make that work. But no, it's been really popular. Now, who came up with the idea?
It's his fault. It's all his fault.
Yeah, well, we have a very good producer by the name of Tom Stroud who worked with me on production in commercial radio and BBC radio. And the idea was actually born out of lockdown. And he said, why don't you do a podcast? Yeah. No, I said to him, I'll do a podcast. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm just going to get my iPhone and I'm going to talk into it. And he said, if you do that, Alex, it will be boring. It will be a monologue. Why don't you ask Jim Cregan? Jim was my most regular guest on my radio show. And I like to think that we hit it off really, really well. Yeah. And he adores me. Good at that. He may have a different story.
Yes, of course I do.
The chemistry's there. I can vouch for that chemistry. So it was great. And then, who was your very first guest?
Well, we haven't had any. We haven't had any guests. I went to Jim and asked Jim if he wanted to do it. He said yes immediately. And then this was all in one day. And then about 4 hours later, I rang Jim and said, look, I think we need a third person. I said, I think I'm going to ask Tony Hadley. How do you feel about it? And Jim said, yeah, great. I've met Tony a few times. He's a nice guy. Jim and Tony were my favorite guests on my radio show. So that's, Jim and I have become friends in the last 4 years. Tony and I were acquaintances. Jim and Tony were acquaintances. So we haven't had any guests per se because we've forever been in lockdown. So the three of us got together in back gardens last summer. The only guests we've had, we've planned loads of guests for when things get back to normal. The only guests we've had are the ones that we've all been doing individually.
Yeah, which, you know, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. We've had a few promos from our mates who, you know, who we've phoned up and say, do this for me, will you? And and Rod Stewart very kindly did a promo for us. Yeah. And did Gary Barlow do one?
Gary did.
You've got a better memory than me. Who else we had on there?
You got Rod, because you had done Rod a favour. So you said, will you record this thing for us? And you and Rob met up to do that, socially distanced, of course. Tony had done one of those lockdown duets with Gary Barlow, so we've included some of that in our little show reel. So Rick Astley's done something for us as well. Jim, hasn't he? Ricky from the Kaiser Chiefs. So there's been quite a few.
And the actor from the Downton Abbey, that lovely Hugh.
Bonneville.
Hugh Bonneville. Yes,
he did one as well. Yeah. So it's kind of it's
great.
It's very it's kind of fun to invite your mates to help out, and eventually, when we open up a bit more, we'll go around to their homes, or meet them in the pub or whatever you like, and just kind of continue this. The idea really is that we just talk about whatever we feel like. So we only have one rule, that it's we don't do politics. That's the only rule we have. And everything else is open season. You know, you can talk about your love affairs, broken hearts. You can talk about how much money you got in the bank. How much money you got in the bank, Alex?
I've not got much at the moment. I've not got much at the moment, but I've got a lot on my credit card. But it's not mine.
Is that online spending purchases you've been making, Alex? We've all been making during lockdown. It's nothing to do. That's the thing, isn't it? If you just go on the computer, well, I want one of those. You have no idea what it is you bought. You're buying it anyway.
Well,
it's a good idea at the time.
A funny thing happened to me with that is that I kept thinking, I'm not getting my mail. I don't understand. I'm not getting my packages. And I found there's the house next door to me is a holiday home.
Yeah.
And the woman is never there. You know, I think she's been here once or twice in the last couple of years. And so I got one of my mates who's got a key to that house to let me in. And I found all my missing things that had come in from Amazon were all in the wrong letterbox.
Really? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because you're in lovely Dorset, aren't you, Jim? I'm in
Dorset. Yeah, right. Yeah, I love it. I'm as happy as you like.
It's a gorgeous part of it. I'm from Sussex, so I miss my sea because I'm in London at the moment. But heading back down towards that sea is always a pleasure.
Yeah, the river is at there's a slipway here, and the River Stour. I can get on the River Stour in about for the time it takes me to take the cover off my boat. I'm on the river and away down to the beach in about 10 or 15 minutes. There's about half an hour's drive across. I have a little dinghy with an outboard on it across the harbour, and I'm at Mudderford Spit, which is one of the most extraordinary places in Britain.
It's wonderful.
The beach house is a shed there with a sleeping loft in it. It changes hands they're now going for about 325,000 quid.
Oh my gosh!
For a shed on Mudderford Spit.
Is that not on your credit card, Alex?
I wish.
Can you purchase one of those?
I'd love to, and I know Jim can't wait.
It's great.
Wait for me to be his neighbour.
Yeah.
I love you. I'd love to
it'd be great to do a show from there, wouldn't it? You must do a show from there when you can. That would be great to do a show from there.
Yeah, it's quite splendid down there. Yeah. So I'm very privileged.
We had a lovely picnic last summer. Jim's daughter Ava, me and my wife. We went to a very posh beach hut, which is in Jim's family, and we had a lovely day, didn't we, Jim?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah. We do that. We're doing it all the time.
See, that's great.
It's nice so back to with our podcast stuff.
Yes.
It's called Stars, Cars and Guitars.
It certainly is.
There's not that much about guitars or cars. It's mainly about rubbish that we've got up to over the years, because Tony has, he's not a young girl anymore. He's over 21, I know that. And he's traveled all over the world just like I have, and bumped into an incredible array of famous and infamous people. Yeah. And that's part of the amusement is telling each other stories, because I don't know Tony well, and I know him really well now, But when we started, I didn't know half his stories, and he's a great storyteller, and so's Alex. And I sort of fuddle about in the back of that. And I love the fact that we don't have any set plan. It's all make it up as you go along, much like we're doing with you.
Yeah,
you know, I don't know if you've even got any notes.
No. All I'm going to do though, I am going to play a little game with you, because you play the name game, don't you? So I thought, right, turn the tables, and I've seen you do where you held up a little piece of paper, Alex, and I thought, right, I'll turn the tables on you, and I'll do the same for you. So we're gonna do some of that later. But it's really nice though that you've got a podcast that's become popular, just because, as you say, you're just chatting, you're just telling each other stories, you know, listening to each other. And when I was listening, you know, it's so easy to listen to, which is why it's become so popular, of course.
Well, thank you. Somebody very nicely suggested that it was like going into a pub and sitting at a table waiting for a friend to arrive, or you're just some lonely old sod like me and Alex. And next to there's a table next to you with three blokes having a right laugh telling stories, and you're able to eavesdrop on it as if you're part of it. That was the description of what our show's like. So I kind of like that. That works for me. Sometimes it's very amusing. Other times it's not so. You know, when you make it all up, it's a bit like, I'm a guitar player and I improvise a lot. Sometimes you play something really wonderful that you didn't even know you were going to play, and other times you just crash and burn. But that's the fun. That's where the fun lies. Walking along that tightrope of uncertainty is where the fun is.
And I think that's why
people tightrope of uncertainty, my new album.
And for you, Alex, it must be just so great just to work with two really nice guys and just get to hear stories and share stories. I mean, you know, you've done so much yourself, so it must be just great to all get together and just have a chat, really.
Well, I have been very, very lucky in my career to meet some wonderful people, work with some great people. But I am a huge fan of Jim and Tony. And only this morning I rang Jim as a friend and a fan to talk about a single that I bought that he produced in 1974 when I was 12 years old. I was very aware of the name Jim Cregan.
Yes.
When I was 12, 13, 14. I knew he was this awesome guitar player. I didn't know he was such a lovely person. I just knew him as this awesome guitar player who went off to join the Rod Stewart band because Rod needed a great guitar player in his band. So I was always aware of Jim and his career, and I couldn't believe it when I found he lived quite near to me and he would come into the studio. I just thought, this is great. I mean, because I am a real fan of music and these stories. I've wanted to collect these stories for a long, long time, and that's why individually we've gone off. And Jim's done a great interview with Paul Young, and he's done one with his old mate Steve Harley from Cockney Rebel. So you know, there's two good friends of Jim. Tony's done. He's done Shane Ritchie and Harry Redknapp. I've done, you saw me play the name game, I'm sure, with Kathy Sledge from Sister Sledge. Yeah. So we just want to collect some great conversations.
And I think we need that now. You know, if lockdown has taught us anything, it's not so much all about the material stuff. It's about stories, people, you know, just sharing each other's time, really, and just giving each other some time, which is probably why, you know, the podcast has become so popular. I mean, podcasts have just rocketed during lockdown because people are just desperately searching for voices, you know, for that human contact. I think that's what it is. But, you know, it's great. And as you say, Jim, you know, myself, huge fan. You know, you've had an incredible career and still continue to have an incredible career, which I think is great. And long may it continue. But I thought I did want to play. It was Alex's game, and I thought, right, Alex, I thought that was such a good idea. I thought I'd turn the tables on you, and then play your game to you, and then obviously we'll get Jim to play along as well. So, Jim, do you know the name game? Have you seen Alex do this? No. Oh, well, you see, Alex, we just have to explain as we go along.
He doesn't watch my videos. I watch all of Jim's videos, but he doesn't bother to watch my interviews. What does that say about our relationship?
You know, what can I tell you? Alex, would you like to explain your game before we start playing it?
Right, okay. What I do is I get a piece of, a post-it, and I write a name on there, like, say, Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
And then Jim doesn't know it's coming. I mean, this would be a very easy one for Jim. And then I just say, if I was interviewing Jim, okay, Jim, Rod. And I put that up, and he's got to tell a Rod Stewart story. So I did it, when I did it with Kathy Sledge, we did Michael Jackson, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Luther Vandross. Yeah. So I try and customise it to the people that are on the show.
Absolutely. Well, I thought I'd do one for you. So here's your first one, Alex. Okay, so let's have a look. Come here. Right, okay. Bubblegum and cheese. Okay, tell us about bubblegum and cheese.
So Bubblegum and Cheese is a weekly show I do on BBC Radio, and it's the songs, when it started off, it was the songs that other people weren't that happy to play on the radio because they thought there was no audience for the Bay City Rollers or Alvin Stardust or the Monkees or maybe even the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. So I took a lot of pride and pleasure in delivering those songs because they're just not played on the radio anymore.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
And the important thing is, if you play a song by Shawaddy Waddy, and don't get me wrong, I don't play Shawaddy Waddy or the Bay City Rollers at home, but if you play one of those songs on the radio, you play it like your life depends on it. You do not take the mickey out of it. You do not send it up because someone bought that song in the 70s. In fact, millions of people purchased those songs in the 70s or the 80s or the 60s, whenever they were hits. And it's the soundtrack to their youth. So I do that on the BBC every Saturday from 10 a.m. till 2. At the moment, just on BBC Radio Solar. But the show has been networked. And at one point, it was networked on commercial radio to 17 different radio stations.
That's brilliant. You see? Okay. You see, you've learned something today now, Jim.
Yeah, I have. And what's the cheese? I get the bubblegum. Is the cheese because it's cheesy? Because
bubblegum is bubblegum pop, like the Monkees.
Yes.
And cheese as in anything that's cheesy. Because I've said this to Jim before, and to anyone who listens really, if you can write a 2.5 minute, very, very catchy pop song, I think that's clever. I think a lot of musicians can write something with a 20-minute guitar solo in it, or something that's quite self-absorbing. But to actually be able to write Sugar Sugar, which is a great pop song, then I think those people need saluting.
Yeah, brilliant. Well done. You see, we salute you, Mr. Alex. Right, okay, your turn, Jim. Okay, this one's for you.
Katie, yes.
Now, can you tell me a story about a lady called Katie?
I can. Katie Price.
Yes, go on then.
No, not Katie Price. No, sorry. Katie Melua. Katie Melua as a girl I worked with just as she was breaking. My dear friend Mike Batt, I was having a holiday in England, and Mike said, come and stay with me for a week or so, because he stayed for about 6 weeks with me in LA, and we have all sorts of stories. We go back a long way. So I was hanging out at his house, and he brings in Katie Melua, who was just out of the Brit School, I think. And he said, I'm working with this artist, and I'm just about to start the record. I think I've got the direction. He said, well, while you're here, do you want to play a bit of guitar on the album? And I said, yeah, why not? So we made the album, and magically it went to #1. And he rang me up. I think I was in the supermarket, and he said, this is a huge hit, and I want the band that made the record to play a concert at Shepherd's Bush Empire, whatever that's called now. Yeah. So I said, yeah, okay, I can do that. And then he said, well, we're going to have to take it on the road. And so that started a 5-year relationship with Katie Melua, who I would go on record, funnily enough, as saying one of the sweetest, kindest, loveliest humans you'll ever bump into. She's an absolute delight.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, she became a multi-millionairess from these records. Yes. I played on the first 2 albums. Both of them went to #1. Yeah. I've got there's one on the wall behind me, quadruple platinum. Yeah. So she did ever so well, and I was so happy for her. But this is the kind of thing that would happen. We would be waiting. We just got off an airplane somewhere and waiting to go to the hotel, and our minibus would come round, and this bloke who was just a businessman with a briefcase went to get on our minibus, and I said to him, I think your bus this is not your bus. I think this one's for us. And Katie heard me say this, and she said, ask him where he's going. And he said, well, I'm going to the Sheraton downtown or whatever. And we said, we're in America. And Katie said, well, that's probably near us, isn't it? Well, just jump in, come with us. Complete stranger.
Sweet.
And if a limo pulled up for her and a bus for the band, she'd tell the hairdresser or the makeup lady to get in the limo, and she'd come with the band. I mean, that's sort of really humble, loving, thoughtful, kind human being. I mean, I can't say nice enough stuff about it.
Very really down to earth. And have you worked with her recently, Jim? Or have you?
No, I haven't. I haven't worked with her recently. No, I had a conversation with her about 3 months ago, just to see how she was doing.
Yeah.
And but no, I did 5 years of that, and then my daughter was. I didn't want to keep. I did a couple of world tours. With her, and I was getting to the point where I had a new daughter. I had my daughter when I was 59 years old, which is pretty interesting, because you can't spring out of bed.
That's right.
So I wanted to stay around when she was growing up and going to school and everything. I didn't want to be permanently in a band traveling, so I kind of cut back. I still work all the time, but it's mostly easy stuff to do. I don't go away on mega long tours around the world. Take you out of circulation for months. I don't want to do that. I would miss her too much.
Yeah, and that's lovely. Again, you have all these lovely memories that you're now sharing, of course, on your show. And for you, Alex, I mean, you've covered so many festivals and things. What's been one of the most favourite festivals that you've been to and and interviewed people at?
Oh, well, there's been lots.
There has.
The Isle of Wight Festival, because I'm from the Isle of Wight. I'm really, really pleased that after being stopped in 1970 by an act in Parliament, can you believe? They actually, they had an act passed in Parliament called the Isle of Wight Act, which meant that after 1970, you weren't allowed to have a gathering of, I think, 1,000 people, because all of those hippies left so much mess on the Isle of Wight in 68, and particularly 69 and 70. Right. So that was a real fight. And a man called John Giddings he's the promoter. Yeah. He's the guy that made it possible for people really to do gigs on the Isle of Wight again. So I'm really proud that the Isle of Wight Festival is happening just across the water on the Isle of Wight. I'm in Southampton, and I can actually see the Isle of Wight from here because I'm down at the water's edge. So but most of my most of my favourite interviews actually haven't been at festivals. They've been maybe at gigs, or maybe people coming into the studio, people like James Brown, Stevie Wonder. I mean, some amazingly talented people, but they're not always the ones with the best stories. Sometimes it's the people that have just had a couple of hits and been on the real edge of fame.
Yes, that
tell the best stories.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And Jim, is there anybody at the moment that you're kind of watching? Who are you listening to at the moment, musically? Is there anybody that you're really liking?
That guy Kenzo.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. Well, I'm busy trying to help my son, Kenzo Cregan, who's a young rock guitar player. Yeah. He's fantastic. I love him. He's got a new single out called Squeeze, and I've been, funnily enough, I was posting online today, it's just new out, getting people to pay attention to. In it, he plays the guitar, bass, and drums, and my son-in-law is a videographer, and he managed to shoot it where he has all three of them playing in the same shot, and they're all in the same shot together. They're all dressed differently. If you don't look closely, you don't realise it's all him. Right? It's really cool. Yeah, it's a really cool video, and it's a great song. So yeah, I'm thrilled to bits with his progress. He and I. It's a wonderful thing to be able to share the love of music with one of your children. I mean, I've got two girls. My eldest girl is 30 and married and has a beautiful young baby, and she's a model and an actress and that sort of stuff. But everybody loves music, but nobody's following in my footsteps apart from my son.
Oh, that's great. And are they in the UK, Jim, or are they in America?
No, my son's in California, and so is my elder daughter and granddaughter. My younger child, who's Ava Cregan, lives here with me, and that's a huge joy.
Oh, that's so great, especially during lockdown, because you've probably had the most incredible time together. Because you've been there together, and we've just got to stay in, haven't we? We haven't been able to go anywhere. So, as far as your podcast is concerned, so obviously you're on series 2 now. Is there going to be a series 3? Is this going to continue?
Well,
you think?
Yes. I mean, the thing is that we've got the podcast running. The audio podcast is running, and also we're on YouTube.
That's correct.
And like the rest of the world, we're kind of handcuffed at the moment because of lockdown. But when we come out of lockdown, we're going to get back together, and we're working on a television version of Stars, Cars, Guitars. That's really where we see it. We are actually, I know in these interviews people say, oh, we're talking to TV people.
Yes.
And I always think, no, you're not. You're just saying it to big it up. But we really are.
You really are.
We really are talking to TV people at the moment. So who knows?
Oh, that'd be great. And Jim, do you find that exciting, Jim?
Yeah, I think it's the easiest job I've ever had. I just show up and talk.
That's right.
I interrupt people very successfully.
Tell your story.
Professional interrupter.
Oh well, we're gonna play out with some of your podcasts after the interview. So guys, it's been really great to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all the best, and stay safe, and we'll get together and have a drink when we can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Monica.
Be really lovely. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you,
that's
Monica.
it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me, and come back to me next week, and I look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Do you want me for my money? Wanna touch me, baby? Shut the door and send me running. Let me hold you, kiss me with a smile on your face, leave me wiped out. I'm feeling like a hopeless case.